In Doctrine and Covenants, section 72, verse 3, it says, "And verily in this thing ye have done wisely, for it is required of the Lord at the hand of every steward to render an account of his stewardship both in time and in eternity." Now, two things stuck out to me about this verse. One is the idea of rendering an account of our stewardship. God entrusts to us things, and then we are meant to report back to God about what we're doing with them, and whether we are using the time and the talents and the money and the connections and everything that God's given us in a way that God would want us to. We're stewards. Our things are not ours. Our body's not ours. Our money's not ours. Our family's not ours. Everything is God's. And we are accountable to God on how we use them, and whether or not we're using them to build his kingdom and to advance God's interests or advance our own interests. And we rendered that account in both personally in prayers, or in the context of this chapter, we also render an account to our bishop. We do this during things when we talk about tithing. For example, tithing settlement is a way where we can talk about using our funds to build the kingdom of God. We can also do this during interviews where we talk about how we use our lives and whether or not we're using them in a way that God would want us to use them. So there are various ways that we can render an account to God of our stewardship. So that's one thing that stuck out to me. The other thing that stuck out to me is this dichotomy that he makes, both in time and eternity. So he's distinguishing between time and eternity, and lots of times people think of eternity as infinite time, but the way that this sentence is structured, it conveys to me the idea that time is separate from eternity, that in eternity there is no time, that time doesn't make sense as a concept. And there are other verses that hint at this, that time will be no longer. I think that lots of times people think of heaven and eternity as sitting forever somewhere, but there are other philosophers, there's Eastern philosophers and other people who think of eternity more as the idea of being present always. It's just that everything is present at all times. And I think that conception is probably more accurate, although it's a little bit more difficult to wrap your head around. Just the idea that time is separate from eternity. The definition of eternity means that there is no time. There is no beginning and no end. That time does not exist in eternity.